Hello, hello. My name is Simon Parsons, and today I am going to be sharing with you 5 habits that you can cultivate that will make you rich. I'm not joking here. So, I spent a good portion of my life, probably about a decade or so, hanging around with some of the wealthiest people in Salt Lake City, getting mentored by them. I'm going to share you this story with you, and then I'm going to break down some differences between how they think and how they act, their habits that make them different from everybody else. And these are 5 habits that you can implement to start increasing your wealth. Now, this is not going to make you rich overnight. This is not a get rich quickly type of a scheme. These are habits that need to be cultivated, but they are very effective. They are very powerful. And if you hang around to the end, I'm going to share a very special tip with you that will launch you into orbit when it comes to success in your personal life and in your business. Before we dive in, I would love it if you'd hit the subscribe button. Don't just hit it, smash that thing so I can be with you week in and week out, sharing with you money, mindset, motivation for the driven entrepreneur. Okay, before I dive in and share the 5 habits of the wealthy, I want to share with you like a quick story about how I even learned about all this stuff, how I pulled myself out from having a very average life to living one that is absolutely exceptional and gives me every opportunity that I could possibly imagine. I remember going to school one day and I was thinking, I just imagined myself having a very average life. Like I would go to school and hate it. And then after I finished high school, I'd have to pay money to go to college, which couldn't even imagine that. And everybody was telling me like, you have to go to school. You have to work hard if you want to be successful. So in my head, I equated like hard work and going to school with success. And those are two things that I didn't want to do. So I figured I just wouldn't be successful. And I just imagined myself like getting some really tough job where I hated it and I'd be working 10 to 12 hours a day and then leaving there, going home and doing the family thing and then doing all the chores around the house, being absolutely exhausted, falling asleep and getting up and doing it all over, just like nonstop grinding. Now, what happened is I had a buddy come up to me and he's like, "Hey, you want to get a job with me? I'm going to get a job at the Salt Lake Country Club. It's where all the rich people hang out." And I was like, "That sounds really good. What do you do?" He's like, "Well, I'm going to be a dishwasher." And I was like, "Okay, hold on. I don't want to be a dishwasher." That was my first job and I absolutely hated it. So I hated school, I hated dishwashing, and I hated paying money for school. Anyways, I asked if there was anything else and I found a job as a busboy, which was like one notch up instead of like washing off dishes. I was scraping them off. But what it did is it put me forward facing with a lot of the members. And Salt Lake's a pretty booming area. Right now, it's like one of the biggest tech hubs in the world. But back then, it was still, a pretty big place where there was a lot of influential people that would gather and hang out at the Salt Lake Country Club. I thought I was going to be around a bunch of snobby people who looked down on me and treated me bad. Nothing was further from the truth. In fact, there was more down to earth wealthy people than just like the average people that I knew. And I ended up working there for about 12 years and I got mentored by so many incredible people. They were giving, they were smart, they were expansive thinking. And they taught me a lot about money, about mindset, about belief in myself. And eventually, the general manager of the country club, he said, he could tell I was made for more. So he pulls me into his office one day and he's like, "Okay, I can't hold you back anymore. You need to go do something big." So he gave me 2 months worth of pay and booted me out the door. And I had some ups and downs. Like I had some big failures. Like I almost went bankrupt, but the stuff I learned helped me pull myself out of it. And I ended up building a really cool business. And again, I had a couple ups and downs, but that's what set me on the path of entrepreneurship. Also personal development and understanding about money. And that's the stuff I want to share with you today. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into the 5 money habits of the wealthy. We're going to start with number one. Number one is wealthy people hang out with other wealthy people. Now, I don't mean that from a judgmental perspective. And I want you to think about this. So wealth is not just money. You can be wealthy in relationships. You can be wealthy in happiness. You can be wealthy in joy and love and opportunity, right? So are you hanging out with other people who are wealthy? The wealthy people, they hang out with other, it's kind of the law of attraction. How do you find other people that are wealthy to hang out with? Now, I think, and that was what was cool about the country club, is this place was, designed, it was an exclusive club for some of the wealthiest people in Salt Lake. So just being a part of that, you were around almost like a mastermind. You're around other people who think more expansively, who are more open-minded, who have less limitations. And one thing I realized about wealthy people, versus like average people is we adopt a lot of limitations, a lot of limiting beliefs. Society places them on us. We place them on ourselves. We get programmed from a young age. And what I noticed with a lot of wealthy people is part of it is they grew up in an environment where there was less restrictions or constructs, beliefs, like limiting beliefs placed on them. And just being free of those allows you to be naturally abundant. So when it comes to this habit, what I want you to do is like be intentional about who you hang out with. Are there people who are toxic, who bring, baggage into your life that's weighing you down, who are always thinking negatively, who are thinking very poor, who spend their money recklessly, right? Try to cultivate some, this is networking. Start hanging out with people who are better with their money, who know about money, right? And who find opportunity. When you do that, you'll start adopting those habits and you'll start to see more opportunities come across your desk. So number one, be very intentional about the people you hang out with and make sure they're wealthy in mind. Okay, habit number two. This is something I didn't understand when I was younger, but the power of compounding and playing the long game. So there was a store, like I never really understood how powerful compounding really can be. This means like if you start investing when you're young and you stay consistent, you will be very, very rich in it. It seems like it's taking forever, but it ends up being this upward slope. And that's what compounding is. And I think it's hard for people to truly grasp until they've experienced it in their life. There's a story about a lady who she was, her grandfather gave her one share of Coca-Cola, and this was like in the 30s. And she just, she left it as is, and it paid a small dividend. And that dividend would start compounding and buying, a fraction of another share. Eventually it bought, so she had 2 shares. And this thing kept compounding and compounding. And, it probably took about 7 years for it to buy a full another share. But then, the 3rd share comes after 3 years, and then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Eventually, she was a multimillionaire from one share that had compounded over and over. I also want to talk about playing the long game. So one thing I see that people make a big mistake with is they start on a journey, like I'm going to start a business, and they go after it for 3 months or 6 months, and they don't feel like they're getting anywhere because they're so focused on the short term, and they give up. They start having self-doubt, and they don't put the action in that they need to, and then they give up on that idea. So people, the money habit number 2 is to be consistent, to play the long game, and to understand the power of compounding. The longer you stay in the game, the more wealthy you will become. This goes for investments. This goes for building your business. Even goes for things like building your social media profile, right? The longer you're in the game, the more of a chance you have of seeing massive results. Okay, money habit number 3. This one you may have heard, but it's so important because a lot of people don't do this. It's pay yourself first, okay? Now, here's the gist behind this, is a lot of people who, a lot of poor people will say, hey, if I have any money left at the end of my paycheck, I'll take that and I'll invest it. Problem is they end up spending it before they have anything left over. And they give it to everybody else except for themselves, okay? The wealthy will pay themselves first. Whether it's in business or if they have a job, they will make sure that they get what they earned first. And they will find a way to pay for everything else with whatever is left over. So habit number 2 is this is habit number 3 is pay yourself first. Make sure you are the first person to get paid. I like to say that you can do this with time. So this is why I do a morning routine, why I work out, while I do my meditation, while I do my learning. I do that first so that by the time I start my work day, I've already crushed a bunch of things in my personal life. I've already taken care of myself. So make sure to pay yourself first, okay? Habit number 4 when it comes to money is understand what investing really is. So poor people think of investing as like an expense. I see this a lot with entrepreneurs, and I've experienced this too. Like I remember when I first started when I had my first business, I wanted to grow, but I would make some money, and then I didn't want to take that money and go pay for somebody to help me, like to onboard somebody to help me grow, because it felt like to me that I was growing and making money, but I didn't want to go backwards. I didn't want to give it up. So the wealthy understand, money habit number 4 is that when you take money and invest it, it's designed to grow more money. So that's why it's so important to, whether you're investing in stocks, investing in your business, investing in your personal development, habit number 4 is to understand that investing is not an expense. And it's so interesting because helping other entrepreneurs, this is one of the biggest struggles is I see so many people they clutch onto their money and they're unwilling to invest in themselves, into their personal development or getting the tools that they need to grow their business. And they ultimately end up failing. And that's a scarcity mindset. So I've said enough about that, but please understand that the difference between an expense and an investment is designed to pay you back, to have a return on it. Okay, with that said, the last habit is, I think this is so important. I'm saying this for the last one, is poor people, they don't spend time learning about money. So wealthy people, they spend time learning about money, learning about finance, learning about debt, learning about taxes, and they become very skilled at it. What a lot of poor people say is, I'm just not good at money. Okay, nobody is good at money when they're born. Okay, we're all born with a lack of knowledge around money. Okay, if you're born into a wealthy family, a lot of times you have parents or you have mentors. Like in my case, I had mentors to teach me about money. But I also went out there and, I spent 3 years diving into every book that I could find, every podcast that I could listen to learn about money. Now, think about like sports, like if you're into martial arts or cycling or whatever, snowboarding, you don't get good until you do it. And that requires you taking action and learning about it. Money's the same way. Like any of us can be very wealthy if we're willing to learn about money. Doesn't that make total sense? But so few of us actually do that. So I want you to commit to yourself, like out of these 5 habits, which ones are you willing to start implementing today? I would love it if you drop into the comments and leave me some notes about what you're doing, what you're willing to commit to enhance your financial wealth. I want you to go through these 5 habits. I'm going to circle back on them. Number 1 is to hang out with other wealthy people and cultivate a network. Number 2 is to truly understand the power of playing the long game and compounding. Number 3 is to remember to pay yourself first. Make sure that you get a cut of everything you make before you send it off and give it to other people. Number 4 is to really understand what investing is. Investing is something that is designed to give you a return. It is different than an expense, and poor people think of investing as an expense. And number 5, be a student about money. Okay, you can start. You can hire a coach if you want. You can learn by listening to podcasts. You can, buy a book about it, buy several books. That's one thing that I did is I tried to read every book that I could about money. So those are the 5 habits that will make you rich, the 5 money habits that will make you rich. Please implement those. I'm going to share one more with you. And this is understanding growth mindset. So growth mindset is, I'll share an example. A poor person will say, I can't afford that. They'll see something they want and they have a certain budget, right? Or a certain income. And they'll say, I can't afford that. Okay, a growth mindset will say, how can I afford that? And when you make that simple shift from making a statement that says, I cannot afford that, to asking a question, how can I afford this? What happens is that opens up your mindset to become more resourceful. You start to think about the possibilities. What do I need to make happen? And when you embrace a growth mindset, I promise you can find new ways to stretch yourself, find new ways to create money out of thin air. It is absolutely amazing. All right, I'm going to close up this video. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Again, make sure you hit the subscribe button. I will see you in the next video.